Welcome to the deep dive. We're about to plunge into a story that, well, it really defies easy explanation. A fascinating saga, and one that just saw its final chapter close.
That's right. Just a few days ago, June 24th, 2025, Clark Olofsson, the notorious Swedish criminal, he passed away, age 78, after a long illness.
Yeah, and while that's, significant news itself, for us, it's really an immediate invitation, a reason to explore something much deeper.
Exactly. A psychological phenomenon that has baffled experts, captured the public imagination, sparked just endless debate for decades now.
We're talking, of course, about what became famously known as Stockholm Syndrome, and it really makes you wonder, what truly happened in that bank vault all those years ago? Why does it still echo today?
And that's precisely the mission here with this deep dive. Our aim isn't just to recount the life of a famous criminal, though that's compelling enough.
Right.
It's about peeling back the layers, looking at human behavior under, well, extreme pressure, and really examining a concept that even now is still debated, still scrutinized,
Yeah.
often misunderstood.
So we're going into the life of this charismatic figure, Clark Olofsson, and the extraordinary events that didn't just define him, but actually coined a term.
A term that's now just woven into our cultural fabric, isn't it? We'll cut through the noise, try to distill the core insights, and, offer you a clear shortcut to understanding this bizarre, gripping, and deeply human story.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because to really get the nuances of Stockholm Syndrome, you first have to understand the man at the center of it all, Clark Olofsson.
Mm-hmm.
I was genuinely struck, just digging into this, by the sheer path his life took. Born in Stockholm, 1947, his path seems set for something. Well, far from ordinary. Certainly not on the right side of the law.
No. Grew up in a tough neighborhood, lots of instability early on.
And by his early 20s, he was already, firmly entrenched.
Yeah.
A career criminal. We're talking armed robbery, drug trafficking. The rap sheet just goes on and on.
But it wasn't just the crimes, was it? It was this charisma, this almost legendary charm he had.
Exactly. I mean, imagine being so notorious that another criminal, during a heist, specifically demands your presence. That's the kind of infamy we're talking about, right?
Right. And what's fascinating here is how that unique influence, that sort of potent mix of crime and charm, it wasn't just a personality quirk for Olofsson.
It was a tool.
It absolutely was a tool. Played a big role in his criminal life, his leadership among peers, sometimes even seemed to disarm people around him. You see this pattern early on.
He wasn't just committing crimes, he could bend situations, often just through sheer personality.
Which sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it, for how this very specific blend would play out in one of the most bizarre, psychologically confusing standoffs in modern history.
And what a standoff it was. Let's go back. August 23rd, 1973, the scene. Norrmalmstorg Square,
Yeah.
right in the heart of Stockholm. Busy place. The Kreditbanken bank. Imagine the chaos. Jan-Erik Olsson, an escaped con, bursts in, armed with a submachine gun, takes 4 hostages, 3 women, 1 man.
And his demands were incredibly specific.
Yeah, shockingly clear. 3 million Swedish kroner, 2 pistols, and get this, the immediate release of Clark Olofsson.
His prison buddy.
Exactly, someone Olsson had befriended inside. And here's where it gets truly wild. The Swedish government, under just immense pressure, they actually complied.
They brought Olofsson to the bank.
They did, straight to the bank. He joins Olsson inside the vault with the hostages. And for 6 agonizing days, this wasn't just a robbery. It was like a psychological pressure cooker, a live drama, the world watching.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the term we're talking about actually comes from. What truly baffled everyone, the authorities, the public, was the behavior of the hostages.
Utterly extraordinary.
It was. Instead of the fear and hatred you'd expect, they started to show this strange sympathy for their captors.
Kristen Enmark, right, the 23-year-old hostage, she became central.
Absolutely. Her famous phone call to the Prime Minister, Olof Palme, I mean, it sent shockwaves. She didn't just express trust in the captors.
She said she was more afraid of the police.
Exactly. A greater fear of the police rescue attempt than of the criminals holding her. Can you even imagine? She even said she wanted to leave with Olsson and Olofsson when it was all over.
It just defied everything they thought they knew about hostage situations.
Completely. Left the authorities just scratching their heads, grappling with something they just couldn't categorize. It didn't fit any existing framework.
So the siege finally ends, August 28th. Police use tear gas. Olsson and Olofsson are arrested. Hostages are, thankfully, physically unharmed.
Physically, yes. But the real story, the one that would ripple through psychology, law enforcement, pop culture for decades,
Yep.
that was just starting.
It really shows how one event can just fundamentally shift our understanding.
Precisely. And it was this baffling behavior that led Nils Bejar, the Swedish criminologist and psychiatrist advising the police during the siege, to coin the term Stockholm Syndrome.
Okay, so define it for us again based on his thinking then.
He saw it as a psychological thing where hostages develop positive feelings, maybe even loyalty towards their captors. They might interpret small kindnesses, maybe being given food, or not being harmed as genuine care, not strategy.
A survival mechanism, essentially.
That was his take. A way the mind copes with extreme stress, powerlessness, and the idea, well, it gained traction fast, especially after another huge case just a year later, 1974, Patty Hearst.
Right, the kidnapping. She didn't just sympathize, she joined them in bank robberies. That really cemented the term in the public mind, didn't it?
It absolutely did.
And this is a big, but not everyone bought it then, and there's even more pushback now.
Oh, definitely. The counter-arguments are strong, and they've gained momentum over the years.
But what does this mean for the whole concept? Let's go back to Kristen Enmark herself. Much later, in a 2021 BBC interview, she flat out rejected the label.
What did she say?
She called it a way of blaming the victim. Argued her actions weren't some warped bonding, but rational survival strategies. Adaptive, smart even, given the impossible situation.
That's a powerful reframe, and she's not alone in that critique.
No. Look at Australian journalist Jess Hill. Her 2019 book, See What You Made Me Do, calls Stockholm Syndrome a dubious pathology with no diagnostic criteria.
Wow. Dubious pathology.
Yeah. She suggests it's tangled up with misogyny media hype. Basically saying it minimizes the victim's agency and implies they're psychologically flawed instead of responding naturally to terror.
It's almost like the media loved the catchy phrase.
And we all just ran with it, right? Without maybe fully thinking through the implications for the people actually involved.
Which raises this incredibly important question, doesn't it? Is it a real psychological phenomenon? Does it have clear markers? Or is it more of a media myth? An oversimplification.
Does it fail to capture the complexity of how people react under that kind of duress?
Exactly. When you look at Hill's critique, she points out how the story often shifts. It moves from the perpetrator's violence to the victim's failure to react correctly.
Implying that if you don't hit your captor constantly, something's wrong with you.
Right. Or that you were somehow complicit. And that framing, as Hill argues, can be really damaging and, yeah, often has these misogynistic undertones since so many famous cases involved women.
So the debate isn't just if it exists, but how we talk about it, how our language shapes how we see trauma and victims.
Precisely. Labeling survival strategies as a syndrome might pathologize normal reactions to abnormal situations. It's like trying to fit, I don't know, a square peg into a round hole. Human behavior under that kind of pressure, it rarely fits neat labels. And that debate, it's very much alive today.
Absolutely. Okay, let's circle back to Olofsson himself in all this, his role. Because while he was pivotal, obviously, he had his own version of events.
Always.
He always claimed that the authorities actually asked him to keep the hostages safe, that there was a deal, maybe a reduced sentence, that he felt they never honored.
Like being promised a reward for helping out, then getting punished anyway?
Exactly. Which makes you wonder. That famous charisma, was it genuinely calming things down? Was he looking out for them? Or was he playing everyone, manipulating the hostages, the situation, for his own gain?
And with someone like Olofsson, that line between calming and manipulating, it's incredibly blurry, isn't it? Especially in those extreme circumstances. It's a fascinating ambiguity.
So, despite more prison time, more crime later in life, his name just became welded to Stockholm Syndrome.
Inextricably linked, this global symbol. A legacy he himself criticized, actually. He felt it totally misrepresented what happened in those 6 days and his part in it.
The irony, though, is just, wow. A guy who spends most of his adult life locked up trying to escape cells.
Becomes a pop culture icon.
Yeah, his story gets dramatized. First, that 1977 docudrama. And then, much more recently, that big 2022 Netflix series, Clark, with Bill Skarsgård. Huge hit.
Think about that arc. From the criminal docket, the police files, to having your life story played out on screen for millions. All while you're literally confined, or at least defined by confinement. It's a strange kind of fame, isn't it? Especially for someone who spent so much energy trying to evade the spotlight. at least the legal kind.
And beyond the pop culture thing, the actual event, the siege itself, it had real practical consequences too. It fundamentally changed how Swedish police approached hostage situations.
Oh, so.
Much more emphasis on psychological understanding, on communication, negotiation, trying to avoid escalating things through force. So there's a lasting practical legacy there too,
Yeah.
separate from the syndrome debate.
Right. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, we've covered a lot. The remarkable, often contradictory life of Clark Olofsson, those 6 incredibly intense days in that Stockholm bank vault,
Hmm.
and the enduring psychological puzzle it left us with. We've dug into the different takes on Stockholm Syndrome from its birth to the really strong critiques challenging its validity today.
And Olofsson's death, June 24th, 2025. It definitely closes a chapter on his life story, but the bigger story he unwillingly inspired, that continues to provoke us, to intrigue us. Yeah. That 1973 robbery, it just remains this incredibly compelling case study. Human behavior under extreme duress.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, how thin those lines can be. Victim, perpetrator, fear, empathy. How the human mind adapts in ways we just don't always expect when pushed to the absolute limit.
And maybe the most fascinating stories, the ones that really stick with you, are the ones that don't have easy answers.
Yep.
Like that initial shock, hearing hostages say, I trust the guy with the gun more than the police coming to save me.
What does that truly tell us? About survival, about trust, about the human spirit under unimaginable pressure.
It's a puzzle, all right? One that keeps us thinking, keeps us learning, and maybe makes us a bit more aware of just how complex and resilient the human mind really is.